Saving America one entrepreneur at a time, it's the Biz Wrap Podcast with your host, Michael Manahan. The show that celebrates small business and entrepreneurs, it's Biz Wrap Radio with your host, small businessman, educator, and author, Michael Manahan. And welcome to another edition of Biz Wrap Radio. It's your host, Michael Manahan, and thank you so much for joining me today. We got a great show lined up for you. If you've not listened to us before, Biz Wrap Radio is the show all about small business and entrepreneurs. We're out here to help you run your business better. This is America. We operate on the free enterprise system, and we would not be able to do what we do in this country without all of the small businesses, 30-some-odd million small businesses in the United States, creating jobs and moving the economy forward. But we have a lot of battles we have to fight as small business people. We're fighting, of course, our competitors. We're fighting many big corporations that are trying to move in and push the small businessman out of the way. And, of course, we're fighting, unfortunately, our very own government that's got a big war going on against small businesses because they really don't appreciate what small businesses do for the economy, so they put you through a myriad of hoops, regulations like you wouldn't believe, compliance up the yin-yang, and with a sweep of the hand, the government can basically put you out of business. And by the way, I've got a guest coming up on a show in a couple of weeks. You've got to hear this story. He was almost bankrupted by the federal government, and it's a story that will absolutely shock you to the core. But anyway, let's get on with some ideas and some thoughts. I'm very lucky to have joining me today on a phone interview a fabulous lady. She is an expert on patent and trademark law, and it is Barbara Luther from the Luther Law Firm. Barbara, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's my pleasure, Mike. Thank you for the opportunity.
Now, did I paraphrase that correctly? You are basically a patent and trademark expert.
Yes, I am. I've been doing this 25 years, and I get to meet individuals and small business owners with new ideas, and I just love figuring out how to protect them and help them profit in the most efficient way.
Now, this is a big issue for small businesses and entrepreneurs, and I teach entrepreneurial finance at Cal State University, and I get a lot of older students who are actually in business. They've started small businesses, might be an internet business, might be a little clothing line. And I talk to them about intellectual property. How are you protecting your intellectual property? And first of all, there's a lot of myths out there about intellectual property, and there's a lot of mysteries about intellectual property, and nobody, at least in the small business community, really seems to understand it well. So can you give us, I'm going to call it the Luther 101 on intellectual property? Just what is it all about? What does it mean? How do we protect it?
Yes, Mike. The intellectual property is a very wide category. It covers a lot of things that people are doing in their small business. There's a lot of intellectual property just on the website, and I'd love to do a whole segment with you on websites because those are the storefronts of today, and if you are not tending to them, your intellectual property just floats away over the internet.
Yeah, I've actually heard a story about that. We've got a fellow we know here in Los Angeles runs I'm not going to tell you what business just so it doesn't get identified, but he runs a business. He was basically using Google ads to advertise his business, and he had certain keywords on his website. He got sued by another company that claimed they owned those keywords, and literally $400,000 later in legal fees and settlement costs to settle this what appeared, at least from my opinion, to be an absolutely ridiculous lawsuit. So this is a big issue.
It certainly is. And if you're not aware of the pitfalls, you can find yourself quickly in debt. What he was hit with was trademark violations, and that's a key part of my practice. And we basically, I tell people, I protect your names and ideas with patents, trademarks, and copyrights. And so it can be the name of a new product. It can be using somebody else's name that you didn't think to Google or check. Is this trademarked? Is there a TM or FM or circle R attached to the word when you do the Google search? In which case, you could run into problems like this. Another problem on websites is that people are just unknowing about is many people think you can just copy stuff off the internet and use it in your business. That can get you in big trouble. A frequent thing is copying photos or pictures or artwork and then putting it on your website. There are now people who have put tags on those drawings so that when you copy them, it'll be easy for them to find you and send you a cease and desist letter and ask you for hundreds, if not thousands, of dollars. So be very careful what you copy from the internet.
That's a really good point. And while we're talking about that, let's see if we could get some definitions clear, because I'm not sure everybody understands the fine point of definitions. You know, there's the three major categories of intellectual property. There's patents, there's copyrights, and there's trademarks. Can you give us, what is the definition of each one of those?
Okay. I'll give you what I call a working definition because the legal definition will leave you confused. Hopefully, my working definition won't. Okay, for trademarks, we're looking at relatively simple things. It could be a name, a logo, or a slogan.
Okay,
there are other categories, but 99% of it is a name, a logo, or a slogan.
Okay, so Apple computers and the little picture of an apple, that's their trademark.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. So what about a copyright?
Copyright is, I divide that from trademark because it's usually for something more complicated. Obviously, in Southern California, movies are very popular. Music is covered by copyright. You come up with a new song, but you don't record it, you can still copyright the song. Books, obviously.
Okay, so really we're talking about more content as opposed to your name. This is content. Could be in the form of music, could be written form, could be audio, could be a piece of software. But this is something that I always get confused about. If I have a trademark, there is a process where I get that trademark registered and it becomes an authorized trademark.
Yes.
Does the same hold true for copyrighted material?
Yes, we can file for a copyright on copyrighted material. And it's a very good thing to do that quickly because if someone files for the trademark certificate before someone else copies it, the original creator can sue them and ask for attorney's fees. If you file the copyright after the copying, you cannot get attorney fees. So it's a very cheap insurance against a lawsuit or somebody copying you.
Okay, but just think of me. I'm a small business guy. I create a name. I come up with a name. I do some Google searches. I guess today that's the primary method. I look at the trademark office, and I see that nobody has this name. So I file a trademark on that, and that's great because I'm going to be using that name for hopefully, as long as I'm in business. But then I turn around and I think, my customers, it would really help if I wrote a little article about one of my products so they better understand it. Now, I can't go to the trouble of actually registering every little article or paragraph that I put on my website as a piece of copyrighted material. Wouldn't that bankrupt me?
Possibly, although it's still pretty inexpensive. Two things. Number one is I tell people to start with putting warnings on the materials. If you have a trademark, what we were talking about before, put SM after it right away, and then consider filing later. Likewise with copyright, put a warning on it, and that is circle C, space, the year or years created, space, your company name or your name, and then all rights reserved. So that if you put a new piece on your website, include that warning.
Gotcha. Okay, look at Barbara. We are coming to the end of this segment. Boy, time goes very quickly. This is great stuff. It's BizRap Radio. It's your host, Michael Manahan. I've got Barbara Luther on the line with me. She is a patent and trademark expert. She's sharing with us some ideas how we can protect our intellectual property as small business people. And we will be back right after these messages. And welcome back to BizRap Radio. It's your host, Michael Manahan, and I'm here with Barbara Luther. Barbara Luther is a patent and trademark expert, and she's giving us some ideas about things we can do as small business people to protect our intellectual property. And that, of course, is something that a lot of small businesses and entrepreneurs, first of all, don't understand, and second of all, don't do effectively, yet it can have huge ramifications if you don't adequately protect your intellectual property. So, Barbara, just assume somebody's listening to us out there and they might have a question, they might want to contact you. What's the best way for them to contact you and find out more?
Yes, please phone my office at 480-315-6508. I'm currently in Scottsdale, but I used to practice in Silicon Valley and help companies there.
Well, this is something, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me, but something with like patent and trademark stuff. It's not like if I'm filing a lawsuit in Los Angeles where I specifically need an attorney who's registered to do business or whatever in the county of Los Angeles. Trademark and patent stuff, you can help people in other states. They don't have to be in your state, correct?
That's true for patent, but not for trademark. They do want you to be admitted in the same state as the individual. I'm not sure why it's different, but it is.
Okay. So there are some nuances there. But if somebody called you and you couldn't help them, you could probably send them off in the right direction, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, so what we were talking about, kind of the differences between trademarks, patents, and copyrights. We kind of went over trademarks. We were talking about copyrights now. So let's talk about patents for just a moment. What is a sort of working man's description of a patent?
It is a license to sue somebody. A patent in other countries, a patent gives you the right to make your product. In the U.S., you have to check and make sure there are no other patents that might cover your product that you're selling. So I also do infringement opinions to make sure the way is clear to people being able to sell their product.
And we typically think of patents as being, and I know there's nuances to patents, but typically we think of it as being basically if you invent a new product or kind of a new process to make a product, you patent that so other people can't make the product exactly the same as you do, and that supposedly, and I say supposedly because there's a lot of gray areas in this stuff, but that supposedly gives you some protection.
Yes, it does. And you can also, a lot of my inventors are able to invent and come up with great ideas, but don't want to manufacture or sell. So I also help them find people who can manufacture their product. And I do licenses for that.
And by the way, to all of those entrepreneurs out there who are thinking, hey, I got a great idea for a new product, and having to raise a bunch of money, I'm going to actually start making this new product. Licensing is a fabulous concept. Somebody else takes all of the risk of manufacturing, distributing, selling the product, and if the product is successful, you open your mail once a month or once a quarter, and there's a check, and you basically have done nothing to get it. If the product isn't successful, well, then you haven't lost a whole bunch of money trying to launch the product. And there are people who, they're serial inventors. They go from one invention to the next, and then they get it patented, and then they use somebody like Barbara to develop a licensing agreement. They go out and find people and license the product, and now they're just sitting back basically collecting the royalty payments.
Yes, and that delights me to help people with that. I've had some Very big deals go through, $1 billion in one case. I helped Stanford get patents that got them a $34 million settlement in court. So I love creating value for individuals.
Okay, now I got a question. I don't know if they ever covered this in law school, but it's always intrigued me. If you had a television set in your living room, and I came in and stole your television set, you could report it to the police. They would come to my house, find my television set, charge me with theft. If you have a piece of intellectual property, a patent, I come in, I look at your patent, I copy it, I start producing something exactly the same as what you're producing. You call the police say, well, that's just tough beans. And I have to actually hire an attorney and chase the crook personally and spend literally hundreds of dollars per hour getting my attorney to chase the crook. Why doesn't the government enforce this stuff? They enforce theft of TVs. Why wouldn't they enforce theft of intellectual property?
That is problematic, and people say, well, why should I even bother getting a patent if it's going to cost me all that money later? Well, you get the patent, and then you have a decision later to make. Am I going to make more money suing them or less? And then you go on and you make improvements, and that's basically the way the game is played. However, the government will help you if you have a trademark or copyright, and here's how that works. First, we get you the certificate from the patent or trademark from the trademark office or the copyright office. We take that over to Customs and put it on file there, and then Customs will watch for any imports that are stealing your technology.
Okay,
and
so
that is a cheap way to go after copiers, fakers.
Yeah, it I guess at the end of the day, maybe there are some ways, but it just seems to me this is another example of government being prejudiced against small business because, Coca-Cola can afford to spend, $10 million in a patent lawsuit. Most small businesses out there, much more than about $15,000, $20,000, $30,000, and you're tapped out, which means you can get walked all over by big businesses, which is really sad. But hey, if you just joined us, it's BizRap Radio. I'm your host, Michael Manahan. We've got on the line Barbara Luther. She's a patent and trademark expert. We're talking about how you, as a small businessman and entrepreneur, can protect your intellectual properties, and you do need to protect your intellectual properties. And in fact, with many small businesses today, intellectual property is really, really important. That's things like your name. It could be the actual products you sell. It could be processes you use to make your product unique from the competition. Intellectual property could even include things like customer lists and marketing materials. Now, Barbara, we can't register or patent or copyright a customer list per se, could we?
No, but that would be a trade secret, and you have to keep it secret. You have to limit access to it and mark things confidential. Those are the two basic things you start with to protect a trade secret.
Okay, so there's another category of intellectual properties called trade secrets. I think the formula to Coca-Cola is still a trade secret. It's not patented. They keep the formula in a vault somewhere in Atlanta. It's got like 24-hour armed guards around it with machine guns so nobody can steal it. But yeah, if you've got a secret, you've got to be careful about who you let access to your secrets. And of course, nowadays, with a lot of our secrets being kept electronically, whether it's on databases, whether it's on our computers. I mean, we got this big issue now I hear on the news all the time that there's office towers in China that are full of nothing but hackers, people trying to access computers of businesses here in the U.S. to steal our secrets. I mean, this is just unbelievable.
Yes, it's a big problem, and so people need to use their passwords, change their passwords frequently, and make sure that only people with a need to know will access the information. Yes, Coca-Cola's trade secret is now, 140 years old? So they've been very, very careful for a very long time.
Okay, so we're almost out of time, but just very, very quickly, if I've got a little invention here, Well, give us two prices. What would you estimate the cost of, say, filing a patent, and what would you estimate the cost to be for filing a trademark on my company's name?
Okay, so I rejiggered my business because I did work for well-funded companies in Silicon Valley and major corporations when I was in the top firm in Chicago. So I rejiggered my business to make it much more efficient and much more user-friendly. So we are doing trademark applications for $800, which includes the government fee. There are some follow-up costs, which usually don't exceed another $700 or so. And then we do patent applications, the starter provisional patent application for between $5,000 and $10,000. We give people a firm quote on the patent application, so they have no other fees for the first year.
That sounds pretty reasonable. We're coming to the end of the. Barbara, can you hang over just for a few more minutes?
Yes, I'd be delighted.
Okay, it's BizRap Radio. Your host, Michael Manahan. We're talking to Barbara Luther. She's a patent and trademark expert, and we're going to be back with just a little more information on this very exciting topic in just a few moments. And welcome back to BizRap Radio. It's your host, Michael Manahan, and we are talking with Barbara Luther. She's a patent and trademark expert, 25 years in the business, and we've been throwing around ideas and concepts and how you as small business people really need to think about protecting your intellectual property. Intellectual property could be patents, it could be trademarks, it could be copyrights, it could even be trade secrets. And she's given us some great ideas, and towards the end of the last segment we started to talk about cost, and I was a little surprised. Barbara says we could work on a trademark application for less than $1,000. So for less than $1,000, you can start to protect the name that your business uses, and perhaps if you have a logo or a certain type style or certain colors you use, you're basically protecting your company's identity for literally less than $1,000. I mean, why is not everybody in the country who owns a small business registering their trademarks? And I still run into many businesses, some have been around for years, who have not taken the step to do that. So think about that. A little more expensive if you're talking about patents. If you're an inventor and you've just invented something, it's going to cost you a little more, and you're probably going to have $5,000 to $10,000 to register your patent. But on the other hand, if it's not worth $5,000 to $10,000, you really have to consider, have you really invented anything that's different and that's unique? Because if it's different and unique, it's certainly going to be able to generate over time a lot more than $5,000 to $10,000. Barbara, this has been great talking with you. I so much appreciate it. I've got a lot of other stuff to cover in the show today, but I want to give you one more opportunity. If somebody's listening to the show, they've got a trademark issue, they've got a patent issue, they've got any concerns about intellectual property, how can they contact you? How can they get a hold of you?
I'd certainly be delighted to talk to them. We have a office number of 480-315-6508, and they can also access the website at lutherlawfirm.com. At the website, we have a quiz where they can think about their idea and answer questions and find out which type of intellectual property protection would be best. And we also have available to them a mini book online, which is called Barb's Rules, and I collected all the bad things that happened to people before they came to me, and then rephrase them into positive rules that people should follow to avoid giving away their intellectual property.
Well, you got to talk about this. I'll call you maybe offline about that. Now, I got to ask one final question before we finish with you, Barbara. I remember I moved to the California back in 1989, and I was working with a business, and it was a small business, and I needed some legal assistance, and I called up this Beverly Hills law firm, one of these big fancy ones with like about 9 names in the law firm. And I got the attorney on the phone, and the first thing he said, well, can you cut me a retainer check for $25,000 and then we'll get started? Most small businesses listening can't cut you a $25,000 retainer check just to have a conversation. Can somebody bend your ear for a few minutes without having to cut you a check?
Yes, and the best way to do that, and we do free interviews. So the best way to do that is to contact us through the website, and my office manager will be happy to call them and set up a Skype interview or FaceTime, or even just a phone call.
That's absolutely fabulous. So go to the website, call Barbara. Just once again, it's 480-315-6508 or www.thelutherlawfirm.com. There's a bunch of free information on the website about patents, trademarks, and intellectual property. You got to take care of this, people. If you're running a small business, if you're an entrepreneur, you've got to pay attention to intellectual property so you don't get scooped or find yourself in some big lawsuit. Barbara, that's all the time we got. Thank you so much for joining me on BizRap Radio.
Thanks, Mike. It's been a pleasure.
Take care now.
Bye.
That was Barbara Luther joining us from the Luther Law Firm. You can contact her at www.thelutherlawfirm.com, 480-315-6508. And Barbara is an expert in patents and trademarks, something you should be thinking about for your business, protecting your intellectual property. If you have a question about that, contact Barbara. On to one of our regular features, which is ridiculous and foolish moves by the government that obviously affect significantly small businesses. And this one is, it's almost laughable. There is a company, Old Dominion Freight Line, in Fort Smith, Arkansas, and apparently they have violated the U.S. Equal Opportunity Act because they had a truck driver who reported that he was an alcoholic and he was abusing alcohol and a danger to himself and other people on the road. So the company said, well, you can't be a truck driver anymore. Now, they didn't terminate this individual. They just reassigned him to non-driving positions. And, of course, at some point in time, hopefully the truck driver enrolled in some kind of an alcohol abuse program. But, again, the driver was not terminated. He was reassigned within the company to non-driving positions. Don't forget, even trucking companies have a whole bunch of positions in the office and doing other things. Well, apparently, the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission filed a lawsuit against Old Dominion Freight because, according to them, somebody with an alcohol problem actually is covered by the Americans with Disabilities Act and is a disabled person. And as such, if you don't let them basically have the job that they want, you're discriminating against them. You're discriminating against disabled people. So if you stop an alcoholic from driving in your company, putting some guy who's boozed it up every day and a danger on the road, if you take and you stop that guy from driving, you say, okay, you're going to work in the office, buddy. Guess what? You have violated the Americans with Disabilities Act, and you will have the federal government after you. Now, I mean, really, is this really what we want our federal government doing? Chasing down trucking companies that tell people who have alcohol problems, hey, guess what, George? You're drunk every day, and you're not going to get behind the wheel of that big rig and perhaps wipe out a couple of dozen people on a freeway accident. When does it stop? When does the idiocy? When does the foolishness of these paper-pushing bureaucrats who sit in offices and have no concept of the real world and create and then enforce these ridiculous, foolish rules and regulations that end up costing small businesses a ton of money? We talked last week about the the company down in Texas, a catering company that had an employee who had an expired green card. Now, green cards are different than driver's licenses and a lot of other permits. A green card, apparently, even if it's expired, it's still good. And this company suggested to the employee that, hey, you need to update your green card. We can't have you working here with an expired green card. Company was fined $26,000 by the Naturalization and Immigration Service because an expired green card is actually perfectly good evidence that you are eligible to work in this country. And then, of course, the big question becomes, why do we have small businesses doing the job of the federal government? The federal government can't seem to control the borders. People get into this country, get all sorts of benefits from the federal government if you arrive, by the way. You get housing, you get food, you get education, you get medical care if you manage to get into this country. So the federal government can provide all of these benefits to people who come in illegally. But if you, as an employer, even accidentally hire somebody who's in this country illegally, you're going to get your head chopped off by the federal government because you're supposed to be detective small business. Your job is to go out there and do what the federal government cannot. And so as a consequence, there's a huge bureaucratic burden that it falls on small businesses to have to police what the government apparently is not capable of policing. It's not right. It puts an extra burden on small business, and it costs all of you small business owners, all of us small business owners, a lot of extra dollars. Anyways, you are listening to Michael Manahan. I am your host. This is Biz Rap Radio. We are the show all about small business and entrepreneurs with ideas, thoughts, and concepts that can help you run your small business better, or perhaps raise additional capital for your business to help you expand. We are going to be right back with another segment of Biz Rap Radio right after these commercial messages. And welcome back to Biz Rap Radio. I'm your host, Michael Manahan. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the show all about small business and entrepreneurs. Tell us about it. Issues with employees or maneuvering through the forest of government rules and regulations you have to maneuver through as a small businessman. We're here to help you with all of that, and each week we feature different specialists on various and experts on various areas that affect small business. We had on earlier in the show an expert on patent and trademarks, Barbara Luther from the Luther Law Group. And if you are a small business person, you really do need to be thinking about protecting your intellectual property. Intellectual property, it's not like regular property. If somebody steals my television, I can call the police and file a report of theft, and they may attempt to find the guy, and if they do, they'll arrest him. But that doesn't happen with intellectual property. It is up to you to protect your own intellectual property and to be on the lookout for other people who might be stealing your intellectual property. And today with websites, that's become extremely easy for people to do. You put up your website, you put your pictures, you write articles on your website, other interesting information about your business or your industry, and the very next thing you know, your information is on somebody else's website. So you want to watch out for that and make sure you're out there protecting your intellectual properties. Now, I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about something that is very near and dear to me. For many of my listeners, I was not born in the United States of America. I moved here 25-odd years ago, and I moved here for a number of reasons, but certainly one was my belief in what has traditionally been known as the American dream. And it worries me because as a university professor, I often talk to my students about the American dream, and I get a completely different version from them of what the American dream is. The American dream really was a set of ideals in which freedom includes the opportunity for prosperity and success. It's the concept of upward social mobility that can be achieved through hard work. In part, the idea is if you work hard and you apply yourself, and you will prosper. But as importantly, your children will prosper, and we've certainly seen that in the United States of America, and we continue to see that. I know as a college professor, the number of students I have whose parents came here from other countries, and those parents, of course, never had college educations. But my students are graduating, first in the family with a college education. I did basically the same thing. My parents did not have a college education. I came to the United States, and I graduated with college education. Graduated from Pepperdine University, but somehow that's all been subverted. This idea, and maybe we should talk a little bit about the history. Why is the American dream important? Well, it's important because at the time the whole concept of the American dream came about, people were coming to the United States of America in particular, and that's not to say they didn't come to other countries. In North America, such as Canada and Mexico and perhaps even South America, but they were coming to the United States to escape what was not possible in the countries from which they came. So if you were living in the 1700s, if you were living in Germany or Spain or France or Britain, your chances of upward mobility, your chances of your children living a better economic life than you were extremely limited. Families who worked in factories, their children worked in factories. Families who worked on farms, their children worked on farms. There was not the concept that the next generation would be any better than the generation that went before them. All of a sudden, here's the United States. You can come to the United States, big, wide open country. You can apply yourself, and you can improve your lot and improve your prosperity in life. Well, now there's people questioning whether or not you can still do that. And part of that questioning, unfortunately, is twisting exactly what the American dream is. There was an article in the USA Today here just not too long ago talking about it, and it says that right now it's going to cost you $130,000 a year to achieve the American dream, and part of what they believe is the American dream is owning a home. Part of it's having a four-wheel drive sport utility vehicle. And part of it is also having being able to put away $17,500 a year into your retirement savings plan. I don't know where they get this stuff. That was never owning a house was never part of the American dream. The American dream was that you could work hard, make money, and that your children could live a better life than you. They would not be tied into the economic and more importantly, probably the social constraints that people have lived through throughout history. In the United States, it truly is possible and was possible, to be born into dirt poverty and to end up as a billionaire. But again, that's not the American dream. All the American dream is that you can work hard and you can create prosperity for yourself, yes, but also primarily for your children, that they can live a better life than you can. But according to USA Today, we can't, of course, do that because unless we can guarantee that we can put the kids in a house, we can get them a four-wheel drive SUV, and that they can put away $17,500 a year. They're not living the American dream. Well, I disagree with that. That's not what the American dream meant, and that really is subverting really what America is all about. But if you do want to live the American dream, one thing I can assure you, it is extremely difficult to live the American dream if you're just out there working for some corporation. And it's real simple. If you're out there working for some corporation, a huge amount of what you're earning is tied up or taken away from you in the form of taxation, federal, state, local levels. The taxation is incredible. Got to remember, back in the 19, if you were making $50,000 a year in 19 14, your tax would have been 2%. If you're making $50,000 a year today, you're still probably paying 25% of what you make to the government. And that's the obvious taxes. And, of course, there's thousands of hidden taxes we don't even see. But, in addition, there is a certain amount of limitations on your upward mobility when you're working for somebody else. And that's one of the things we're trying to promote here on BizRap Radio. As entrepreneurs, you can earn a good living, and you can also be more in control of your future and your children's future. And you really do. If you start a business, what happens? You start out the first few years, you don't make a lot of money. It's tough. You struggle a little bit. But as the business grows, as your customer base grows, as your reputation grows, your business starts to do better and better. And very soon, your income is outpacing many of the people who work for other corporations. You're building an asset that perhaps you could sell in the future, or you could give to your kids, if that's what you want to do, and if the kids are interested in the business. And you can move your income up very rapidly compared to incomes of people who work for other corporations. You might have to work for a corporation for years and years and years to double your income. Who knows, maybe 20 years. But you could potentially double your income in a couple of years if you're an entrepreneur and if you make some of the right decisions. So here at BizRap Radio, we believe that one of the best ways of fulfilling the American dream is to go out there and start a business or run a business or buy a business. Be in control of your own destiny. That is really how you can live the American dream. You'll never live the American dream if you are reliant either on the government or on some large corporation for the money you put in your pocket every month. Well, that's all the time we've got this week. It's BizRap Radio, and here at BizRap Radio, we believe we can fix the United States of America through a fundamental concept that individuals pursuing their own economic interests in free markets will create more prosperity for more people than can ever be achieved through government regulations and a planned economy. BizRap Radio, fixing America through individual economic freedom. I'm Michael Manahan. Thank you so much for joining me. We'll be back again next week.